do it.
Open world racing
I'm gonna check out HokiHoshi's The Evolution of Racing Game, Open Worlds, and the End of Innovation. Probably gonna have a lot of opinions about this myself. Let's see.
games have changed a lot in the over 30 years they've been around. We've seen incredible advances in the industry, and modern worlds can look and feel shockingly close to real life. But it feels like not everything is better today than it used to be, and some features and design choices we had decades ago have been lost to time. So today, let's look back at some of the most iconic open worlds in racing and see what they did right, what they might have done wrong, and what makes a good open world in a racing game. Now,
you know, generally what I'm always impressed about is like how modern developers completely ignore the lessons of the past. I feel like the developers that make the new games have never played the old games and have no idea where to start.
Racing games have technically had open worlds since as early as the late 80s, and while these are really technical marvels of their time and fun to see, one of the first true racing games to really have the style of open world that we're familiar with today would have been Midnight Club Street Racing.
That was a weird game, but we played it. That I encountered that had this kind of gameplay was Midtown Madness. I love that game for the PC.
Pretty rudimentary open world by today's standards, and might not seem that impressive at first glance. But this was essentially the first attempt at something like this, and they really set the bar high, and established a lot of standards for what open worlds should be providing for.
I wonder if he talks about Midtown Madness, but I don't think he does. Either he doesn't know about Midtown Madness, or he chose to ignore it. Because that was made by the developers that made Midtown Madness 1 and 2.
Players.
And I think 3 as well.
Let's jump forward a few years to what may just be my favorite open world of all time, or at least my most nostalgic, Bayview, in Need for Speed Underground 2.
What
Bayview
mods did he do that the AI is broken?
By not having any pedestrians. Now this might seem like a small detail, but seeing actual people walking around, not just cars driving while cruising the open world, can do wonders for making the environment feel more alive. It is worth noting that this is often an issue tied to the game's rating, as having the ability to hit or even try to hit people in a car can bump your rating up with the ESRB. Another step back here, also somewhat related to age rating, is the absence of a cop pursuit system.
Dude, the thing about age rating, like how many people actually base their purchase on age restriction on a video game? Like, are there really that many parents out there that didn't buy video games that are 12 plus, 16 plus, 18 plus? Like, do parents really look at this shit? Like, I really wonder if that makes as much of a difference as they always mention.
The sky changes subtly between dawn and dusk, clear and overcast, and it can rain, which does affect your handling. This is another one of those seemingly...
I don't think it does. Rain does not affect your handling in Underground 2.
Clear early morning,
it's very subtle.
Or a dark rainy
I've
night.
never noticed
for
that.
What it's worth, some of these changes
that case, it's so subtle that I never noticed it.
Tunnels and underpasses. Need for Speed has chosen to build game worlds loosely inspired by real-world cities, while maintaining that freedom to create whatever they want.
I generally like the approach of like coming up with your own city, because at some point everyone has seen LA, right? Like, we've seen LA in Rockstar games in like 3 different versions already, right? Like, I'm pretty happy if the city is supposed to be LA without being LA exactly, because we all know what it looks like by now.
Not only are little cash bonuses hidden all over the map, there are even hidden races. See, most races will show up on the map, but hidden races won't, and they often have much higher reward payouts. So in a game where you can be pretty strapped for cash, exploring the world had some very important value. On top of this, Underground 2 introduces one of the best features we'll ever...
I think, though, that the game should have had some kind of radar to find the hidden events, because I don't think a lot of people had the patience to drive every single road, every single chapter, just to find the hidden events. Like, either you had a map that was showing you where the hidden events were, or you just didn't care. I don't think anyone just went everywhere and searched every single spot. I know that you get phone calls from time to time from dudes telling you where those hidden races are, but the information they give you, at least for me, is not good enough to find them.
The game's
Oh yeah, exactly. When I heard the dude calling me about an hidden event somewhere, I had no idea what he wanted from me. Exactly that. Same here. Like I had no fucking clue. Like what do you want from me right now?
of fast travel means that you would interact with the world for much more than just getting to the next race. If you wanted to build a car, you'd drive to the car lot to buy one, then head to the right performance shop for upgrades, then drive out of town and install a body kit. Maybe next door was the graphics shop. And finally, you could throw on some underglow at a specialties shop a few blocks away. This did slow down the gameplay, and I'm aware that some people don't like this and would rather just teleport to exactly where they need to go or have everything in one place. Sure, especially by today's standards, Underground 2 can play a bit slow, and I think the game could have benefited from a sort of district-to-district fast travel.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Even on my first playthrough, I did not enjoy driving everywhere. I was like, I just want to start this event, and now I have to drive the entire map from the top to the bottom just for one event. If you remember late game Underground 2, and you do all the events on the map, then new ones will spawn. And it's possible that you're somewhere on all the way on the top in the heights, and an event spawns all the way on the top, on the bottom, and then you have to race over the entire fucking map. And I hated it so much. I was like, why the fuck do I have to drive this road again? I've driven this road 50 times already. I don't want to drive it again. Like, it annoyed me a lot. Nowadays there are mods that allow you to teleport in this game, which is a godsend and makes this game a lot more fun to play through again. But yeah, I didn't like this forced exploration. I still think you should have a quick teleport to points of interest, and if you want to, enjoy the scenery, discovery you always want to drive, then do that, right? Just let the player choose. It's my opinion. Let the player choose. If you wanna play it like this, play it like this. If you wanna play it the other way, play it the other way. True. There are some in-betweens that I actually like. Horizon 1 is actually a great example. In Horizon 1, you unlock the outposts that allow you to teleport to the outposts, but then you still have to drive up to the events. I gotta say, that is a lot better than being forced to drive all the time. I mean, that was what he was mentioning, having the ability to teleport between the zones, right? Horizon 1 had that, and it's really good. And that is probably a gameplay design choice that I can agree with. When you're like, okay, I can teleport to certain zones, but I can't teleport to everything. Like, I'm okay with like an in-betweener. But I don't want to be forced to always drive, because sometimes you have already discovered everything. Let's say you have 100% map completion, you have done all of the side stuff, and you just want to do this event. Then you probably don't want to do the drive again.
2005, Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. Their second game made some incremental improvements to the formula established in the first, but 3 really blew things out of the water. They kept the multiple city structure, but now we have 3 or...
Why does he skip Midnight Club 2? 2 was definitely a proper Midnight Club game, but 3 definitely better than 2, and I like 3 more than 4 as well.
But now, I want to talk about another major shakeup in the open world racing genre. One that, to this day, is almost hard to believe. 2006 saw the release of Test Drive Unlimited. This game delivered a full-size, one-to-one geographical replica of Hawaii's island of Oahu. This had...
Man, if I have a dream, or rather if I had a wish for this year, I want Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown to be amazing. Give us an experience like TDO 1 and 2, like take the best bits and pieces of TDO 1 and 2, slam them into Solar Crown. There's gonna be so many happy car guys. I already know, man.
Fast travel was also very convenient in TDU, where you could instantly teleport to any road you've driven on before for free.
It was actually quite fun.
For a map this big, having a convenient travel system did make a lot of sense. Now, map size isn't everything, but a map on this scale is a pretty big...
This is also a good in-betweener. You have to discover the road first before you can teleport to it. That, in my opinion, is also a great way for game design. You have already discovered this road, then you can teleport to it. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that I'm saying is in Forza Horizon. And yeah, the games are not bad. They sold well for a reason, and that is one of them.
It really is a beautiful and varied island filled with plenty of sights. But let's bring it back to our established basics. We do have a police pursuit system, and even greater dynamic weather than we've had before. But unfortunately, we again don't see pedestrians walking around the open world, and there isn't too much of a gameplay reason.
Honestly, this fact never bothered me. In a car game, I don't care too much about pedestrians. For example, Unbound has pedestrians. It makes it look a little bit more alive. Definitely a lot more alive than Heat. But if it had to be cut for technical reasons, I would be okay with it. But you know, I just wouldn't mind that much.
There is still some good value to the open world. Like I said, there are plenty of interactable buildings, car dealerships, real estate agents, tuning and clothing shops, and much more. This gave the world a lot of value on its own, because you would still need to find that Ferrari dealership in order.
I was about to say, the game just needed you to find the stuff. I don't think the game gave you any hints where to find the stuff that you want. I remember, like, I have a Honda. I was like, okay, and where's the Honda shop? Like, I always had to look it up online, where everything was.
Throughout the next few years, we saw releases like Burnout Paradise, the franchise's first open-world game, and a great evolution of their format.
Honestly, I think Burnout was better outside of the open world. Burnout 2, 3, Revenge were a lot more fun in my opinion. Paradise was good, but I preferred the non-open world for Burnout.
It wasn't really until 2011 when we got another game to innovate heavily on the open world. The sequel to Test Drive Unlimited, creatively named Test Drive Unlimited 2. And
the thing is, at the time I was playing Blur. Blur was a 2010 game and that hooked me for like 4 or 5 years. And I remember when this came out, people were just complaining about the handling, so I was like, I'm not missing out here, right? I was like, it's fine. It's all good. I'm not missing out here because, yeah, handling seems to be bad. Yeah, for me, TDU2 did like 1 step forward, or let's say 2 steps forwards and 2 steps back. It had some things that the first one didn't and the other way around. Which is why TDU Solar Crown, it should like combine the best of both worlds. I think it would be a fantastic game.
1 year after TDU2's release, Forza would branch out from their motorsport roots and try something completely different. Horizon. This game took place in Colorado, had no police system, no pedestrian traffic, no houses or character customization.
What do you mean no pedestrian traffic? What is this? Like, what do you mean no pedestrian traffic? Of course there was traffic.
A much smaller map than TDU, with very limited off-roading ability, at least at launch, worse club features.
Pedestrian traffic is supposed to be people walking around? You can't say pedestrian traffic. It's just pedestrians. There's a word for it.
And not even a major city, just a small town and some scattered suburbs. But what Forza Horizon did have was a damn good driving model, and a really impressive car list. See, the problem that every other game...
Dude, this game really surprised me, because I saw the promotional material for this game, and they didn't even try hard. They didn't try hard in the slightest. And this game blew me away. It was so good. It was so much fun. Like, it had bosses like Most Wanted, it had the open world, it had good handling, it had a lot of cars. It was fucking insanely good, and they still have not reached the overall quality of this game, the entire franchise.
You could, and I did, spend hours in just one small section of the map trying to link together a solid drift line in an 8.6, or you could blast through the speed zones and traps dotted around the map. These are some of Horizon's other crowning open-world achievements. Seamless.
I actually liked doing 100% discovery in this game. Like picking up the discount boards for cheaper upgrades and discovering all the roads was actually quite fun here. And I really enjoyed it. Sure, it was the first time ever doing it, and that's why it was fun, primarily, but I did very much enjoy it here.
There were also hidden barn finds throughout the world that, when found, would unlock a new car. This is similar to the collectible hidden wrecks we saw in TDU2 as an answer to the need for more exploration. But honestly, it even goes all the way back to Midnight Club Street Racing, where hidden cars were unlocked by finding secret spots in the world. Again, nothing here was really that new. It was just done really well. We even had a shop or interactable
That's really the point here. It was done really well, right? It is so hard to say that to any modern racing game, right? Like what happened to the game is done well, right? Like nowadays the game is just thrown together in some way, shape, or form so it can be released, right? Like that's my problem. Like turn up the fucking quality of the game again.
They kind of solved the fast travel system as well, by not letting you go anywhere instantly, but giving you discoverable outposts around the map that allowed you to get roughly where you needed to go. Now, I've got to say, elephant in the room.
What I also really like is that towards the end of the game, you do unlock an ability to teleport everywhere, right? Like that, in my opinion, is good balance. You don't have it in the beginning while you're discovering the map, but once you have discovered the map, you're in the end game content, and you might want to finish up the last few sectors of the map, then you can teleport. That, in my opinion, is pretty good, especially in regards of progression. I don't know if you ever played World of Warcraft, but at first you walk on foot, then you get a mount you can ride on, and later on you get some flying mount, and you can start flying everywhere, right? Progression. You start somewhere, you get something better, you get something better.
Studio that created some of the most iconic childhood favorites was dissolved and put onto other projects. Shortly after the somewhat fumbled release of Test Drive Unlimited 2, Atari laid off over half the staff of Eden Games, the team behind both TDU1 and 2. The studio would shut down entirely shortly after. So Test Drive Unlimited was dead. Midnight Club had gone missing, and Need for Speed was struggling to find its footing again, with Criterion now at the helm, previously the developers of Burnout. So when Horizon looked around in the early 2010s, it realized its competitors were gone. And luckily, Playground Games took this to heart, buckled down, and just 2 years later released a sequel, Horizon 2, set along the border of France and Italy. This game
Pro tip, don't play the 360 version. It's so much worse. If you can at all avoid it, play the Xbox One version.
Car meets were added, along with a somewhat bigger and more lively main city. The thing about Horizon, though, is that the cities aren't really meant to be the central player hubs. The festival sites are. And from a design point, I do think that's a really smart idea, because it means you don't need a city or town to create a lively area in your world. Just plop down a festival site and build it however you want to suit your needs, and then decorate it with a bunch of stages, lights, and people. Unfortunately, we did see what I think is a step back here. Instead of the festival site containing multiple different buildings that all have their own purpose, there is now only one main festival building where...
Yeah, I totally agree with that part. That's what I meant with, Horizon 2 lost some of the charm, some of the car culture, and a lot of the features that you had. These meetups where you were doing like a bunch of challenges, and then if you've done all of them, then you got one wheel spin, right, in Horizon 1, as well as, much more elaborate festival sites. It was a little bit too streamlined, I mean. It was too streamlined, and it was just probably for time saving, but it definitely lost a lot of its charm.
Horizon 2 sold very well though, and the series was quickly starting to gain traction in a competition that not many other companies were still in. There was, however, one new player coming onto the scene with a pretty interesting concept for an open world. Just a few months after the release of Horizon 2, Ubisoft launched The Crew, a game that promised a good story focus.
Same story here. Like the Crew 1 was so much more ambitious than the second one. Like it was so streamlined in the second version of the game that I really started to hate it. I actually quite enjoy replaying the first Crew game. You have to buy the game again because you can't reset your progress, but it's quite it's really fun to play through.
The Crew did make a splash, and its open world was a big part of that, but it just didn't have too much else going for it. Horizon 2 may have had a way smaller map, but the moment-to-moment gameplay felt a lot stronger and had more lasting potential to most players.
What triggers me a little bit is that the Crew 2 doubled down on microtransactions, and they are successful enough to make another game, which tells me that the Crew Motorfest, the next installment, is just gonna be another game that's gonna be infested with microtransactions. And if you wanna progress at a reasonable level, you're gonna be spending money on a consistent basis. And I just don't think that the quality level of the crew is high enough to warrant that kind of money. Like, if the game itself was better, I would be a lot more willing to spend money on it, right? But it feels like it's just a mobile game, and it has the same monetary demands as a mobile game. You know, not enough content, not enough quality content, and everything costs money. And I hate that. Why is this successful? You know what I mean?
And then, suddenly Need for Speed announced a comeback, a return to the black box era underground style with a new studio at the helm, Ghost Games. This franchise reboot promised a return to greatness for Need for Speed, but fell flat on its delivery. There were some things to love. The customization was impressive, it had a great visual style, most of the character cameos were pretty cool, but besides having some very questionable vehicle handling and a story that many found hard to
That is one thing I will never understand in my life. You spent over 50 million making this game, and you mess up the handling for a car game. It's like you play a GTA and your character cannot walk straight. Like, how do you mess that up? That is the one important thing of any racing game, and you mess it up. How do you spend so much money and then be like, hey, did we pay someone for the handling? What do you mean no?
like.
Dude, I was so excited for this game too, because that was like the first Need for Speed that had a 2-year development cycle. That was unheard of, right? That Need for Speed gets 2 years of development, because back then the Copium of 2015 was, this game has been in development for 2 years, and they spend a lot of money on this. They spend 2 years developing on this. There's a lot of money in there, and they finally get the time to develop the Need for Speed that we want, right? And that was the story back then, right? They had the time, they had the money, and they know what we want. You know, now we just want this game to release. And holy shit, this game was a turd. What a turd it was. Like, you played this game for a few minutes and you're like, why are the cars so weird? Like, I've never played any racing game where the cars drove like in this game. Like, it was uncomparable to anything. And it got worse the faster your cars got. The faster your car became, the harder it was to drive these cars. And what annoyed me so much about this is that 70% of the events, at least 50%, more than 50% of the events in this game were pure drifting. And the drifting just didn't work in this game. First of all, I prefer racing more than drifting. And then you force me into 60-70% drifting events where the drifting handling model doesn't work in the slightest. It triggered me so hard. I played this game once and didn't touch it for 3 or 4 years, which was pretty funny because they allowed you to play this game with EA Play, like a 10-hour trial, and it was the full game. Like, in the 10 hours of the trial, I played the entire game. I didn't buy it. And then 3 years later, I think I got it for $5 on a discount. I was like, okay, let's check it out again, right? Like 3 years later. But I just played it for my EA Play subscription, which back then I think cost €4 a month. And played it for 10 hours. I was super disappointed. I was really mad at Need for Speed, the developers, everyone. I was destroyed, man. Like, how could they fuck this up so much? And I just had to walk away, man. I walked away from Need for Speed for quite a while.
In 2018, the crew released a sequel ahead of Horizon 4's release, this time expanding out from just cars to now include planes, boats, and much more. They knew they couldn't compete anymore with the behemoth that Horizon was becoming, so they wisely chose to broaden their scope and turn this fictional America into more than just a car playground. They also added the ability to get out of your car and walk around, which is a feature I love and sorely
he skips a few games.
TBU. Horizon 4 released later that same year, and this time, instead of increasing the size of the map, they added seasons. The entire game world would change every week to give the environment a sort of fresh coat of...
I'm actually mad that they didn't bring back seasons. I know there are seasons in Horizon 5, but without winter, it doesn't feel right. Because they just changed the wetness, right? In Horizon 5, they just changed the wetness of the tracks, right? It was bullshit.
Horizon 4 was starting to show that its formula needed a shakeup. But then, nothing really came after it. No more crew games from Ubisoft, TDU was now long gone, along with Burnout and Midnight Club. Need for Speed did release Heat in 2019, but Ghost Games hadn't really managed to do
He did actually ignore Payback. I like that.
anything with the new open world, and then they shut down. Both Turn 10 and Playground took time off to work more on Forza. For 3 years, nothing really happened in the open world racing game space. People just kept playing Horizon or the Crew and waiting for something new. Then, in the summer of 2021, Horizon 5 was announced, and later that same fall, released. Our prayers were answered, something new to break up the monotony and same old thing we'd been doing for years now. Oh, wait, no, this is just the same thing we had 3 years ago, and 2 years before that.
It was good that this game released because it was COVID, it was lockdown, there was no new games whatsoever because developers couldn't really develop too well from their home, right? I was happy this released because it was boring as fuck with no new games whatsoever, but then you start playing it and you're like, man, this is really a one-to-one of Horizon 4 with some of the features that I liked missing, like ranked online multiplayer racing, which is what I did the most when Horizon 4 came out, right? So now that was gone, and I was like, oh man. So what I'm gonna do now? You 100% the map, and then you basically wait for the DLC. One thing I will say, Horizon 5's Hot Wheels DLC is great. That one's really fun and much better than the main game because the main game is a copy from 4, right? Yeah, I don't like the map. I don't like the map of Horizon 5. And you don't have the seasons, so it always looks the same too. Like that combination is pretty bad. And then you have no ranked multiplayer and the Eliminator doesn't work as well. And yeah, I primarily like the release of the Hot Wheels DLC.
5 sold and reviewed insanely well. And bugs aside, I do think it's a great game. It's just not a new game. It's a slightly better version of the slightly better version of the slightly better version of the...
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that. I don't think I put Horizon 5 above 4. Like, first of all, I like the first one the most. It has the most character. But I do think that 4 is better than 5.
Many of the most recent releases have been tied to an aging console generation, and now we're able to be free of it. The next big open world racing game will be able to utilize what is now current gen hardware without having to worry about decade-old consoles.
Tell that to Need for Speed Unbound, right? A game that actually released only on next generation and PC, and they didn't really use it. Right, one of the premier racing franchises in the world, just doing a copy and paste on Heat and calling it a day.
Need for Speed Unbound, which did only release on current hardware, innovated in some ways, largely in the campaign structure, and much to my surprise and happiness, finally added pedestrians to Need for Speed worlds, helping to make Lakeshore feel much more alive.
See, he called it pedestrians and not pedestrian traffic.
Test Drive Unlimited is also planning a new release this year, under new leadership, and one that I have faith can provide a good handling model. But unlike 1 and 2, Solar Crown's scope is much smaller, encompassing Hong Kong Island, a region about the same size as Horizon 5's version of Mexico. We haven't seen gameplay either, and
okay, I will say that a well-populated small map can actually be better than a giant map. Right? If they end up having a well-populated map with a lot of stuff to do, I'm perfectly fine with a small map. I do understand that sometimes you might want to have a 4-hour drive, but I'm not that kind of guy. I personally don't need that. If the small map is well-populated, well-designed, I think I will prefer that actually. Man, I'm so thirsty for a good racing game. I am so fucking desperate at this point. Give me something that I want to play for more than a week. Like I've been live streaming, creating content for 6 years now, and most of the time when a new game comes out, you play it for a week and then you just play the old stuff again because you realize, well, I did have more fun with the old stuff. Yeah, I do hope that they're not copying Forza Horizon and they come up with their own thing. If they want to copy something, they should copy their own games, right? Test Drive Unlimited should copy Test Drive Unlimited.
What lessons can we learn from the past? And have the successful franchises shown us what really is best?
Dude, that's a question most developers never ask themselves. Like, what can we learn from the past? Because if you don't learn about the past, you're doomed to repeat the mistakes again. Good fucking video, man.